think we're now live. So welcome all, welcome panelists. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. I believe we've still got some more people joining. We had over 100 registrants, so some people still making their cup of coffee or tea. But maybe we just crack on now and start with the introductions, and then we can get into the session in a couple of minutes. Okay, so let's start. It's a beautiful spring day in the UK, so I'm hoping it's nice weather where you are. And my name is James Rosenshine. You probably know me before from Corrosion Radar. I'm your host for CUI Over Coffee. And CUI Over Coffee is aimed at promoting online discussions within the asset community to exchange information, experiences, and ideas. We do have the pleasure of having a distinguished panel today. Ali Meshekas, Mahaba.
Marhaba, James.
And we also have with us Simone Cazolo. Hi Godag.
Hi, Godag. Godag.
Hi, Godag.
Yes, good.
And Praful. Hello again, Praful.
Hi, hello, namaste. That's what I can say.
and also, I'm looking forward to this. So I like to say to Mike Hill, which lack are ye?
No bad, still like yourself.
So hello to all of you, and it's a great to have you all on the panel. I'll get you to introduce yourself shortly. Just as a reminder, we hosted 8 online sessions last year in season 1, and it stimulated a good, healthy debate into the challenges we face with corrosion under insulation and what could or should be done about it. In season 2, we started looking to aim to introduce a number of leading companies in our ecosystem to understand what they're doing, how they're going about looking to combat CUI. And yeah, I think we all agree it's a bloody pain for us all, and it's still very costly. So we had a couple of sessions with Tampnet, Larsen Tabro and Yokogawa, who joined us at the end of last year. And everyone's coming from a holistic perspective. We all believe that we need to take a systems approach to combating CUI. We need to improve collaboration amongst us all. It's clear that the CUI community, we look outside, we need to look outside of our silos. So if we're CUI engineers, asset integrity engineers, we need to look to maybe our IT teams for support on digitalization. And likewise, people within the IT areas are looking for good operational problems that maybe digital technology can solve. So we all need to work together. So what I'd like to do is probably start off by asking some of our panelists all of our panelists to introduce themselves. So let's start with Ali. If you'd like to introduce yourself, and no doubt you're in a very nice warm climate at the moment.
Yeah, sure. My name is Ali Meshekas. I'm working with Saudi Aramco since 1984. I was in the field facilities working with inspection around 36 years now experience with the facilities and inspections. Currently, I'm handling Juaima fractionation plant inspection unit supervisors.
Thank you. And if I can get Simone, if you can introduce yourself too, please.
Sure thing. I'm Simone Cazolo. I am a data scientist working in Cognite. I'm based in Norway. Cognite is a quite young company working now on with data, pretty much data and digitalization of heavy asset industries. And I work in specifically in a group of data scientists working in different fields, among which we have production optimization, we have smart maintenance, and we work not only with oil and gas, but with a number of heavy asset industries. And of course, corrosion is a big focus in the industry right now.
Thank you, Simone, and it's good to hear there is some focus on corrosion management. And Mike, if I can let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mike Hill. I work with Saudi Aramco Energy Ventures, which is the corporate venturing arm of Saudi Aramco. My background is a finance guy, so I'm not hugely techy, but I've been playing around in the sector investing really since the late 90s with a number of different venture capitalists and private equity firms, and joined Aramco in 2012 when we kicked off their corporate venturing program. And we've recently invested in Corrosion Radar. Exciting to be involved in Corrosion Radar's journey.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to have you on the panel. And finally, last but not least, Praful.
Thanks, James. My name is Praful. I'm the CTO, Chief Technology Officer of Corrosion Radar, developing and bringing technology solutions for CUI monitoring and predictions.
Excellent, thank you. So it's great to have you all on the panel, and I say we've got a good variety of people from different backgrounds and experiences. So very quickly, let's just go for the housekeeping before we start. So the session will be up to an hour. We'll spend no longer than 45 minutes on the panel discussion with 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. We won't do a poll today because we've got lots of content and topics to cover off. Our intention is to keep it high level, but we'll go into a bit more detail. And of course, if you've got any specific questions at the end, please ask those. The session will be recorded and made available to all registrants. And yeah, we're happy to give the mic to people, or so say we recommend that you post your questions early so that we can have a look at them and make sure we cover them off at the end. So let's get started, shall we? Has everyone got a coffee, hot drink, or in the Middle East?
In Arabic.
Here we go.
Excellent. Good. So let's start off with, we always need to start off with this issue of corrosion and insulation, because we're after several decades we're still talking about it, and corrosion and insulation is finding us before we find it. It's an ongoing problem. So I'm sure, no doubt, there's been lots of good small improvements in terms of how we manage CUI over the years, and I hear this a lot. But we're still in this never-ending firefight and vicious cycle. So I'm just wondering, Ali, from your perspective, you're on the ground in operations. I'm sure when I talk about CUI and firefighting, it's something that resonates well with you. Why do you think we're still battling with CUI? Should we be looking at things differently? I mean, I'm sure you've seen some improvements, but we still seem to have a problem for some reason.
Yeah, actually, Jim, yes, we have a lot of problems in the corrosion and insulations, especially for inspection methods. It's a limitation to find the corrosion and insulations, especially online. It's a hidden enemy. We cannot find it unless we do the right way for inspection for that segment. Most of the time, we have a limitation for inspection for the corrosion and insulation, especially for the existing plant. For a new plant, maybe we have a lot of technology coming. It can be installed during the construction of the new plant. But for the existing plant, which is sometimes, we have a lot of process, we cannot shut it down because it will affect our economy in the kingdoms, especially in the kingdoms on that one. We need to inspect it for corrosion and insulation online without removing it, stripping the insulation, or shut it down, which is cost mainly. Still, we are suffering from the corrosion and installations without solutions.
And no doubt, Ali, there is lots of mitigation strategies that you're already using, and different tools such as new insulation or coatings, and no doubt there's lots of stuff that you can do, but you seem to still be fighting it.
Still, yes.
Okay, and Praful, maybe I'll ask you this question, because Ali spoke about the current issues still with CUI, and you've been working on solutions for the last 10 years in terms of looking at the problem in a different way. And is that from your perspective, is that what we should be doing? We should look at the problem in a different way because we still seem to be grappling with this issue.
Yes, so James, it takes me back about 15 years back, where I read a literature or publication from a large company, oil and gas company, highlighting the problems of CUI. And it pains me to see that we are still talking about the same problems. I mean, looks like the approaches of the past have limitations, mitigations, protection against CUI with coatings or insulations. There's no silver bullet. We still have problems, and we have to look at it differently. And that prompted us in Corrosion Radar to look at the problem in a different way. We found that probably there's a missing link about regular monitoring. There's too much of inspection happening or not happening at all. There's too much of risk. Can we reduce the inspections, make that process more efficient by monitoring and predictions? That prompted us to develop that, James.
Okay, so that's something. So you basically did look at the situation from a different perspective, and it sounds like from what you're saying, if we can detect where and when there is a problem, then that should determine how we go about combating CUI, rather than trying to understand how we combat it first. Let's get to the root cause quickly through maybe regular monitoring.
Yes, James. I mean, it's a system issue. It's not an inspection issue. It's not a coating issue. It's not a insulation issue. It is a system issue where combined whole system is not working well together. How we can optimize the whole system, and monitoring is part of the puzzle, of course, but it needs to be looked at differently.
Okay, yeah, it's an interesting perspective. So let's open up this conversation to Simone and Mike. So Simone, from your perspective, working for Cognite, you're a technology company, and of course there are lots of different, I presume, lots of different applications for your technology. But I presume you're also looking to listen to the market and understand what are the key operational pains that potentially technology can help with. So is asset integrity being a subject that is driving demand in technology like yours? Is corrosion driving demand for technology like yours?
Yes. Asset management is definitely one of the driver in the business. Corrosion is a part of it. We know about this issue. This has been a big issue, of course, offshore, but also onshore on plants and petrochemical plants and so on. And as Praful said, it is really a system problem. It's not enough to have one sensor, one set of data, and tackle the whole issue. So what we have seen, what we are trying to do is gather data from a different amount of sources, what's happening at the inside, let's say, of the pipe or of the equipment, and the outside, and try to do maintenance and predictive maintenance. Try to understand when corrosion is starting and how it's developing, so that we know when makes sense to stop the equipment, and in a way when it makes sense also to gather other activities, other maintenance. So if we have really to stop the item for some time, we can isolate it in safety and do a number of operations all in one go, so we save downtime pretty much. And what we see is that really data can be crucial. There is a lot of fragmentation of data, a lot of siloing of data. There is a lot of software around that handles this data, but they very seldom talk to each other. And it's very difficult to schedule maintenance in the good way. It's also very difficult to have good communication between the work order and when the work order is necessary, and the asset integrity monitoring, and, for example, the calendar-based inspections. So we see there is a lot of work to do. We are starting doing some good work in here, and we are starting to see very good results and moving to a more modern and more mature field, which may involve, big data, smart analytics, physics simulations, and ultimately maybe even robotics.
So it sounds like there's a good variety of different technology applications which can be applied to maintenance and predictive maintenance, and that sounds all well and good. But is people approaching you saying we really need to tackle corrosion? Is it something that's sticking out when you engage with people, or are they still completely lost as to what to do about this problem? Or are they coming to you with specific, we need to do this, or they're coming to you saying, help us?
Yes, we have some people approaching us asking for specific solutions for corrosion. Most of our customers don't yet even know that you can do predictive maintenance and predict to some degree, of course, corrosion and corrosion under insulation. So we have to tell them, hey, if corrosion is a problem, and by the way, we know this is typically a problem, then we can approach this with some specific use cases, and we show what we have done in the past. And Michael and Ali from Aramco, we are working with Aramco on the number of use cases, and we know that I mean, corrosion under insulation is a topic that it's picking up. I think only this month I had at least a couple of discussions about this with our customers.
So that's clear. So looking at it from the perspective of a financier, and Mike, you must see lots of different technologies out there, lots of emerging technologies. You must be dealing with lots of fads. Is corrosion management, asset integrity a fad when it comes to emerging technologies, or are you definitely seeing a lot of appetite to address corrosion management from your perspective?
I don't think we can ever look at it as a fad, given the infrastructure is getting older and older and needs to be addressed. It's just going to, if we keep putting back the problem, it's just going to cause us more issues in the future. I mean, I think picking up on some of Simone's points about the technology that's out there and it being glued together, if we're looking at purely from an investor standpoint, corrosion management will fall into one category, but there's so many other categories out there that we're seeing a push by technology companies trying to get into a market, but also a pull from the operators for new technologies. Push entrepreneurs are out there, they've got lots of ideas. I guess they're proactively looking at digital real-time permanent monitoring systems in a number of different aspects. So they see the market potential, and therefore we as investors are seeing lots of new opportunities coming through. On the pool front, I mean, it's the market and the industry just seems to be far more receptive to new technologies now. And ironically, I think it's probably been accelerated by the COVID catastrophe and the associated economic impact. I mean, just purely from a logistical standpoint, logistical issues caused by COVID have forced people to look at, for example, remote operations. I mean, pre-pandemic, it was talked about. Now it's essential, remote operations. So logistical challenges are having to be addressed. I mean, on the other hand, you look at the economic downturn that's been brought by the pandemic is driving operational efficiencies. So people are having to see, how do we operate more efficiently? What are the financial metrics and the impact of that? So it's interesting that both those drivers, logistics and economics, have been driven by COVID and the economic downturn. I guess the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle, which makes it all doable, is the developments taking place in sensing, computing, communications, infrastructure, etc. We're now able to do a lot of the things which we couldn't have done before, and the door's open to really drive that forward. I guess within Saudi Aramco Energy Ventures specifically, we're obviously very keen to hear, Ali's problems and see if we can find him solutions. But we've historically looked at very domain-specific technologies, upstream technologies, upstream softwares, looking at G&G applications, etc. But we're much more moving now towards looking at domain-agnostic technologies that can move easily into the energy sector, whether this be blockchain trading or cybersecurity. Our theory being that, if we can see strategic value for Aramco from using this technology, let's try and put it into our operations. And it covers a multitude of areas, corrosion under insulation being one, but there's a number of other areas as there that we're keen to address. Yeah. And from a small technology company standpoint, if they can have us as a customer, it's nice to have Aramco as a flagship customer to allow people then to other people in the sector to pick up on it. So I think the opportunity for digitalizing CUI management is sort of very representative of the observations. Logistical challenges, the economic challenges, all being enabled by the infrastructure, sensing, computing power that's now available. So I think it's a really exciting space to be in.
That is interesting. Well, it's good to hear from all of you in terms of we need to do things differently. CUI is something which is an opportunity for us to apply technology. There is a growing pool now for using technology, given some of the market conditions that we're facing. That's all great, but I suppose what the challenge we all have, and I hear it all the time, is if we've got an operational problem such as CUI, how do we get going? How do we introduce new technology and digitalization? Because people are used to doing things the way they've been doing for years, and we do definitely see a lot of still inertia. So there's probably lots of different complex mix of stakeholders behind driving a digital initiative to address an operational problem, and actually being able to stick with it as well must be difficult. And Ali, I'd love to get your views on this, but let's just quickly pick up this point with you again, Mike, because you must see come across lots of good and bad cases in terms of how technology has been adopted and applied. And there's lots of great technology out there, but sometimes I feel it's just not getting adopted or utilized in the right way. So what is the problem here? Is it an organizational or change management problem?
Yeah, I think there's a number of factors, isn't there? It's something pretty close to our hearts, because when we invest in a tech company, we want the Aramco to adopt it, because that's where Aramco gets strategic value. So that's part of our mission, is to help accelerate the adoption. And we sit in a pretty privileged situation that we see a lot of investment opportunities, the good, the bad, and the ugly. As you can imagine, there's quite a mix of opportunities. But adoption risk is always a challenge. You can probably add cultural issues, you can add economic concerns, you can add infrastructure constraints, supply chain, procurement. There's a whole raft of challenges there. Some of the ones we see, and some are probably pretty obvious, the intrusiveness of the nature of the technology. If the operator puts it in, is it going to have a detrimental impact on operations if it doesn't work? That's obviously a fear. Technology readiness. Obviously some technologies aren't ready to be adopted yet, but actually some are also too late to be adopted. When I say that, because they've been developed to such a level, and perhaps they aren't able to be adapted to the specific needs of the client, and that causes a real delay in adoption. You also have security, communications issues as well. I know certain operators in Aramco specifically is very, very cautious with its data. It doesn't want to share its data. So a lot of stuff just now is done, on premise. A lot of technologies you see that can only run on the cloud, for example. So those are barriers which stop people coming on board as well. You've obviously got incumbent service providers who perhaps don't want new technologies coming in, but you're maybe reliant on them to provide access to infrastructure, etc. That's a challenge. But I think culturally as well, user perception could be an issue. It's been tried before and it didn't work. That mindset's difficult. Not invented here. That's a challenge as well. I think fear of failure is another big one. You need champions in organizations that are prepared to try the new technologies. And the organizations need to support them that, if it doesn't work, then they're not going to lose their jobs over it. It's not going to be a black mark. So, and there's quite a lot of difficulties there. I guess with the right value proposition, the right technology, targeting the right customers, you would hope that they would get traction, but it's not easy, James, at all. It's not easy.
Yeah, and I understood, and I certainly, a lot of the barriers that you've mentioned, I see, and it's about helping companies get through some of these. And Ali, building on this, from someone who likes to champion new technology and a thought leader in your space. Some of these challenges and barriers must resonate quite well with you, and it must be quite hard for people in operations to also not move away from what they know well, and the ability to visually inspect equipment and pipelines. Look under the installation to check for damage is obviously the best way to understand if there's an issue or not. But moving to data and having trust in the data, that must be quite a big step. I mean, how How does it resonate with you, Ali? Can you trust the data?
You see, if you need accurate data, you have to remove the insulation and do some NDT testing for corrosion under insulations. The best way we have for the inspection to do for corrosion under insulation is stripping the insulations, which is visual inspection. You can see it by eyes. You can do any NDT to verify the data. That data we trusted because it is under your eyes. But if it is technology using as a heading, but maybe sometimes you give you some data, you trust the data for that because the technology is approved to be utilized for corrosion under insulation. But sometimes you surprise is this data is wrong, but you don't know why. Maybe sometimes there is limitations. Some technology you cannot use it sub zero temperature in the lines, which is the surface. It has some limitation to give you, or on the hot surfaces. Hot surfaces, sometimes the technology is affected by the temperature, high temperature, which is reflecting data plus minus for that one. But normally we are using that one because better than nothing, you know, instead of shut it down and losing stripping the whole insulation, shut it down the equipment, which is for a long time period, which is costing a lot of money for a process or a material. That's why we trust most of the technology in the company, because we are doing very hard with any GV company came for technology to be implemented in the company, our company. We involving a lot of central engineering with us for that approvals. This is what I see from my 36 years in the field. Visual inspection is the best.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's about being able to, from what you're saying, if we can use technology to help us get the best out of visual inspection, because you know, hearing from another service provider, roughly 90% of the time you carry out visual inspection, you don't actually see any damage. And I've spoken to engineers where they've had a look, there's no damage, and then they find CUI 2 meters further down. So we need to get the best out of human resources and optimize people and visual inspections by maybe using technology to give some indication of where we think there is problems. But it's good to hear you go through a lot of rigorous testing with technology. I think that's really fundamental. You need to stress and test this new technology and make sure it works. And Simone, what does Cognite major? I mean, you talk a lot about data, and Ali mentioned about data and the use of data, but there's still a lot of challenges with data, and a lot of people get overwhelmed with all these different types of data. So is that something that Cognite majors on, making sense of the data?
Yes. First of all, we see that there is typically a lot of data around. And okay, it might be a challenge for older assets, but there is typically a lot of sensors around the temperature, pressure, and so on. We have, I mean, what we're trying to do is, of course, collect all this data and try to do some analytics, some predictions with that. One of the biggest issues is that all this data is really siloed in different systems. So what Cognite does, what is actually our main job, is to liberate all this data. So extract all the data from all the sensors that are available, extract all the data from the PNIDs, for example, the PFDs, so all the map, in a way, of the plant, where are the valves, where are the pumps, and so on, and bring them all together. So in the end, everything is ingested into one place, which is our product we call CDF, which contains all the information of each sensors, where these sensors are, how these relate to each other. And the data comes in real time or pseudo real time. We're talking about latency of seconds or sub-second latencies. So all the data now, it's suddenly available for analysis. And this is, when this happens, this is already a huge step change, the huge increase in the power of the analytics that we can do. And we are confident that if you have all the information about what happens inside and outside the pipe, so you have humidity, air temperature, pH, whatever, then it's very likely that you can do some good predictions about corrosion and corrosion under insulation. And probably, you know, with artificial intelligence getting better and better, it's just a matter of time if you have perfect data. The problem is that sometimes you don't have perfect data. Quality of data is a big issue, and we work on that, of course. And for some older assets, you're missing sensors, you're missing data. And what we do very often is to back calculate these data from other process, other flow, and other parameters by using a physical simulator. So we fill the gaps in the data that are not available, and of the data that are available, we just liberate them and bring them all together so that the data scientists in my team can use machine learning, artificial intelligence, and other, you know, the most advanced analytics that we have around right now, applying some models and give our best prediction. That, you know, this best prediction don't need necessarily to be 100% accurate. But if I can change what you said, James, before, like the operator is stripping out the installations and then 90% of the times there is nothing. If we could bring this number to 50%, 30%,
yeah.
That's very good. That's real money. And this is why we are working in this space, and you know, try to reduce more and more the human inspections, and inspect and intervene when it's really necessary, or, you know, hopefully when it's only when it's necessary.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, and we have lots of great expertise in the field, but I also am talking to a number of people about to retire, and is there lots of skilled resource that can has all the expertise in the field and in the plant about what actually is going on and what has gone on with CUI? Probably not. So we probably need to start leveraging that knowledge through the use of the data and building on the analytics and Praful. Simone mentioned about filling the gaps with data. A lot of companies will say, well, we were taking a data-driven approach, risk-based inspections using historical data. And we see risk-based inspection being used at different levels of maturity. You know, what are the gaps with the existing risk-based inspection approach, and how do you see technology like Cognite and the use of sensor information being able to fill some of those gaps?
Yeah, James, I think, I'll reflect on what Ali said. In his 36 years of career, visual inspection is still the best data generation tool. And there's a reason for it. I think because people have looked probably in silos. Coatings have been looked in silos. NDT inspection tools have been looked at only in those contexts. But RBI, when it comes to RBI and risk-based inspection, that's a good idea. I think it started about, say, it's almost 2 decades when the first idea of RBI came about, but we still see gaps. And I'm sure Ali can talk more about the gaps in the RBI process, especially for CUI, because risk-based inspection is an optimization tool. It's a prioritization tool for where to inspect, when to inspect, what frequency. But those were designed for other types of corrosion, internal corrosion, which are more uniform. But CUI is a different beast. And now what we hear from the market and from the end users, that RPI, sometimes it works, but many times it's not as effective for CUI, because CUI is a highly likely, it's a very localized problem. So it's unfair to categorize the whole pipeline or pipe circuit into one category when the risk can be very localized. And secondly, there's no frequent data ingestion into the RBI process. So once an RBI plant-wide assessment happens, it takes many years to actually update it. So in between, if something has happened, if inspection has happened, how do you go back and change the RBI process? So it's a very static process. It's almost like effectively you have a picture taken of the plant, photograph, and you're looking after 10 years, again, the same photograph, and imagining the plant is the same, but it's not. It has changed. Water has come in, CUI might have happened. And that's the gap. So RBI needs to be data-driven. It needs to be real-time. If not real-time, it needs to be updated frequently. And we see that with sensors and automation, this is possible. That's what we are proposing as well. Can we update the RBI on a more frequent basis from the data? James.
So that's really useful to see your perspective in terms of RBI, and I think there's definitely room for improvement. We've got 10 minutes left of the panel discussion, so let's try and bring this all together, shall we? One way of bringing together data, people, processes is the use of digital twins. Now, obviously, digital twin is now spoken about a lot. Even Luke Skywalker in Star Wars had a digital twin. So everyone's now got a digital twin, but what actually does it mean? And with my background in digital transformation, now I've come across technology that's been used in the 1980s in aerospace that helps companies build planes using the digital twin. So it's been around for a long time. So by bringing it all together with potentially the use of digital twin, that enables us to visualize data, people, help you collaborate on the data with people and optimize those processes. Sounds all great conceptually. But if from a practical point of view, how do we actually get these types of initiatives off the ground? Ali, from an operations point of view, do you see opportunities with digital twins? Is this something that as someone in operations, are you able to drive these types of initiatives within your company, or how would you go about it?
Now, Norman, for the digital twins, it will play a big role during the TNIs and planning for maintenance. It will help us a lot for that, digital twins, for that, to minimize our times and scopes, and if we utilize that one. It will help us a lot during maintenance and TNI activities. And we are also looking for more and more technologies can minimize inspectors to do a visual inspection for external inspections for equipment, for columns or something. If there is something it can do the external inspections without the inspector to climb the columns twice or 3 times a day to do the external inspections. Yeah. Especially external inspection, as you know, is mostly 24 months interval for the offshore, with 12 for offshore. This is the problem. It will be hurting the inspector to do climbing, high columns, doing external inspection, visual external inspection. If there is any technology to minimize that climbing for safety for the inspectors, saving the time for him.
That's the fun part of your job, isn't it? To go into places that are hard to.
Yes.
Yeah, but I can imagine having a way to virtually understand where is the risk, where is it happening, to what rate is risk accumulating. And that information itself must be valuable in order to be able to prioritize inspection, and then being able to have all the data at hand in a clever, unified way must be quite, I can see, quite beneficial. But building on Ali's comments, Praful, with your CUI hat on, what role do you see digital twins playing?
Well, I think it's good to talk about digital twin, but if we talk about the problem of CUI, earlier in this session, we talked about it's a system issue. And I think digital twin fits into one of the parts of the puzzle. When I say system issue, it's not only technical systems, the finance is involved. Mike is on the panel for that. Budgeting is involved. And also the actions. So digital twin comes in the scoping and actions part. So when I say end-to-end, when you do CUI management, it is about historical data, it is about predictions, it is about data generation and detection. So that's where corrosion radar is focused on. But what after that, the part of the puzzle is how does it matter scoping plant-wide, because it's a massive scale problem. And that's where digital twin visualization comes in. Can the operator very quickly understand plant-wide where the risks are? Maybe dynamic RBI as well, but digital twin wise, can we visualize red, blue, green, where the risks are, and then have a work scope as to in the next turnaround, what are the places where you need to inspect and what are the places, more importantly, not to be inspected. Now, this is safety and cost, both are playing here. So digital twin comes in predictions and also visualization and scoping of the turnaround. So it's a part of the puzzle. That's what I think.
Understood. So maybe we'll throw this over to you, Simone, because you're an expert, yes, obviously, in predictive maintenance using digital twin. I mean, there must be some great case studies. You may not be able to mention the company's name, but we all like a good case study. So can you give me a good case study for predictive maintenance?
Okay, sorry, it might be a bit noisy, but yeah, what we're doing right now is that we are trying to minimize the human inspections in a way. As Praful was saying, there is a component of risk, and so we are trying to through a digital twin have drones, both flying drones, walking drones, and subsea drones, going around your plant, inspecting surfaces, and taking pictures. So comparing pictures taken now with the previous picture, and doing this in visual, in infrared, so for temperatures, in vibrations for potential changes of wall thickness, and in different spaces. I cannot say too much, but so to highlight where it's important that a human has to check. So hopefully try to have robot-generated work orders and focusing the attention of the inspector only there where is actually important. And this is working fairly well right now. We are trying to move to a data-driven risk-based inspection, of course. And there is still some challenges, of course, but our goal is to just try to focus resources for now. We don't want to replace the maintenance engineers, but we want to give them a quick alert. Hey, that is the place where you need to focus your attention. And then in this way, you can save personnel, you can save man hours, you can save in safety also, because as Ali was saying, sometimes you need to climb, sometimes you are in explosion risk zones, sometimes you are in gas leak risk zones. So it's a very complex picture, but we are acting on a multitude of these spaces in trying to focusing resources and just directing the attention only where is important, moving away from a fully calendar-based inspection regime.
And CUI, what's your experience in CUI? Is that something like, is that the next thing that needs to be tackled?
It is the next in the agenda, yes. It's because it's hidden in a way, it's more complex. In this case, we will probably need a little bit more physics-based and a little bit more data science, hard physics approach, just to understand, okay, what's happening under the insulation, in which point, where is the heat focusing, and so on. So it's definitely the next step. We are getting there. It's the next big hurdle to tackle.
So to probably finish off the panel discussion, based on what I've just heard from Ali and Praful in terms of the gaps and challenges with the existing data-driven approach to dealing with CUI, and Simone, you mentioned about some of your practical experience in the area of corrosion management. Mike, you must be getting very excited about what you hear. You must be thinking, wow, there is something out there that you want to invest in, or
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the whole topic of digital twins and how it impacts CUI and other areas is fantastically exciting just now. For the logistical and economic drivers I talked about earlier on. And I think, as Simone's just highlighted, there's going to be so much innovation in different areas, whether it's using drones to capture the data, or whether it's artificial intelligence, or whatever else. There's a whole host of opportunities and innovation that's going to come through, which is only going to enhance the proposition. I guess some of these areas are a little bit more mature than others. So really looking for differentiated propositions might be a little bit difficult. I guess one concern I've got is, and I think it's probably been highlighted by Simone, is that some of these technologies are going to be targeting very niche applications, or maybe covering a very small part of the supply chain. So I would encourage technology developers to look at adjacent spaces as to, is it better to combine an offering that covers a bigger part of the value chain or a bigger part of the problem that's being faced. And then fundamentally having a glue, I guess probably a digital twin, over the top, which pulls all the technologies together to make them usable in the market, rather than an operator trying to use siloed technologies and siloed communication means or whatever else. It's got to be the way forward. So those positions, like those technologies and combination of technologies that can provide a sort of full answer product, based on robust data capture, that can easily slot into existing operations. Yeah, it makes the future for digitalization of the ecosystem really, really exciting, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So whilst it's we spoke a lot about it not being easy to realize the benefits of technology and to get started, and Gino, who regularly joins our sessions, has hands-on experience in fighting for budgets for new technology. I'm sure it's the same for you, Ali. There's financial pressure around. So how do we find a reason to invest in new technology? But we need to look at cost avoidance. We need to look at, okay, well, what's it helping us strip out in terms of costs over the short, medium, long term? We need to think from that business case perspective. And we spoke about a systems approach. Maybe we'll come on to that in a minute, Praful, because you mentioned about taking a systems approach. But let's just finish off the panel discussion before we go into Q&A. There's lots of questions coming in. I need to work out, how we can get through some of these questions. But I'd like to always end with that one killer sentence. What is it that, Ali, you would want people to go away from this session knowing, remembering? What's the key takeaway for you?
Actually, we need the information sharing between and learning between across all the industrial facilities about the corrosion and their installations. I think we are very poor in that as a communication between us and helping us how we can fight this hidden enemy, corrosion and their installation in the facilities. As Aramco, we are willing for any new technology that can help us to monitor any corrosion and their installation in our plant. And Mike, he's from the finance, he's waiting for more and more to be invested in that.
Thanks, Ali. Good plug. Thank you, Ali. Great plug.
and Mike, what's your killer takeaway you want people to remember? You spoke about game changer in CUI. What is it that we can do differently?
I think I'd probably just leave people with a question. How can you make your insulated pipe smart and be open-minded?
Yeah,
I like snappy enough for you.
That is very good. That is, I like that, and yeah, it's important to be open-minded. We've got to get out of the inertia that I think we will see. And Simone?
Yeah, for me, the takeaway is that inspections and monitoring of CUI and corrosion in general, it's going to be data-based. And it is already a reality. We're already doing it with our customer. The inspector goes to a piece of equipment with a smartphone, points this to the equipment, and then the smartphone is telling immediately what equipment is there, where is in the plan, how is it connected, showing all the drawings, all the previous inspection reports, and actually showing the analytics and say, okay, what is wrong? Is it anything wrong with this part or not? This is already happening daily, and we are enabling this. And this is the future. This is how inspections and the risk-based inspections are going to be in the future. More and more smart, and less inspection. Hopefully, only there where it's actually necessary to have an inspection.
So maybe I'd like to finish off then before we go into Q&A. Praful, I know it's good to get a clear statement from you, but I'd like to challenge Simone and Praful. Show us exactly how we do this, because it's it's all well and good talking about it. Show me how we can detect and predict and manage CUI as part of a digital twin. That would be, I think, and if we can, as Ali spoke about optimizing inspections and maintenance, we spoke about, Simone, reducing it from 90% of inspecting and not seeing anything to 50%. How can we make those improvements using a digital twin? That show us. That would be really good to see. Praful, what's your last statement?
So, James, I think, I would like to show it, but I think my summary is CUI is a system issue, and no single company and no single technology provider can address this on their own. It needs collaboration, not only from the operators, but also technology providers, financiers. The whole society needs to come together. And I think CUI or COP is one such effort to bring people, not only from one particular geography or a company, but globally, because it's a global problem. It's a societal problem. So let's collaborate. Let's look at it from a systems perspective, and then let's solve it. That's what I would say.
Understood. Okay. So thank you for also addressing a question that we had in the audience around this systems approach. So let's just, we've got 10 minutes now just to dig into some of the questions. We won't be able to answer all of them, so we will go back to those people if you are not anonymous. But just picking up on Stephen Clement's question, quite technical, so maybe we just try and deal with this very quickly. How do you with predictive maintenance on systems that have complex performance characteristics, and how, for example, temperature and vibration are rarely linear in how they change over time? So how do you deal with those complex performance characteristics? Simone, you look like you're smiling there.
Yeah. I mean, we deal with this on a daily basis. That's it's not easy, but in some cases we can use machine learning. In some cases we can use explainable AI, or there are different approaches for different problems. Neural networks work fairly well for nonlinear problems. I don't want to be too technical, but we have definitely used advanced machine learning and artificial intelligence methods for tackling these issues, and they work fairly well. And again, they're not 100% accurate and correct, but we're not looking for 100%. We're looking for more than chance, and we would definitely do better than chance.
Yeah, understood. So quickly firing out some of these questions and answers. Ali, it'd be good to get your perspective on this, because someone mentioned about the pandemic, and it was good that we all heard about the drivers that are they're out there to help with the adoption of new technology. I wouldn't say the pandemic has a positive impact, but still it's driving change, no doubt about that. But is it really driving change quick enough? In oil and gas, I've been in oil and gas for over 10 years. We don't really change that quickly, do we, Ali?
It's not that too much changing, but it seems that now most of the technology now is coming in the way, especially like as Simone has highlighted. I love what he's working in it, and I'm waiting to deal with him, by the way, for our challenges in the plant for corrosion and their installations. I think the technology has become very fast, which is, I think, is faster than us. Especially in Japan, if you see, there is a lot of technologies coming very fast. We cannot catch all the technology, but we need the technology at least to help us to make the plant safe and integrity. This is what our goal for our plant daily work activities for inspections.
Good, that's good to hear. And maybe I'll go to Mike now with a question. So interconnected digital monitoring adds an information security facet to investment appreciation. What features and attributes are you looking at within a data monitoring system to help you assess the level of investment risk?
Not quite sure I get the question, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well,
maybe Robert, I could take it offline with Robert at some stage, perhaps. Maybe that's the easiest thing. I'm not quite sure the.
No, I mean, I think from an investment point of view, do you see there being a demand for wanting to across the clients, well, the client you obviously represent is Aramco. What is it that, from a remote monitoring perspective, what is the data that our companies like Aramco wanting to capture and help with risk management?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is mainly that a lot of operators, and Aramco is not the only one, don't want data held by third parties, because data is value at the end of the day. So I guess there's discussion, and certainly within Aramco, and Ali, you're probably closer to this than I am. We're looking at, or Saudi Arabia is looking at putting a cloud in place, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just I guess a serious belief that value is in the data, and we don't want to distribute that. So we need to find a way to somehow be able to share that data safely, to allow access for use of third-party applications that don't necessarily need to be on-premise. I think it's coming. It's just going to come slowly. And as I say, it's just the value in the data is the concern.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Maybe an easier question, and I'll go back to Ali, because this comes from someone else in the field, from an operations point of view. It is a challenge to introduce new technology when budgets are tight, and if you don't see direct results straight away, that must be also difficult to get that business case across. So, but when I talk to people about if you've got continuous monitoring of your assets, every second you've got that information to know that you haven't got a problem, or there is a problem, or when to act. That information, that continuous monitoring must be valued from day one.
That's right, James. We have daily monitoring, the on-stream inspection, this is the daily monitoring. Yes. for in the plant, but the corrosion under installation, there is no daily monitoring for that, unless if you have something happen. If there is any slight leak, you can notice it by eyes. Then you have to do your work in that one. But most of the critical piping and equipment in the plant and facilities are monitoring when OSI on-stream inspection programs, which is little limited, but it helps sometimes, to show you the corrosion rate. As you mentioned before, also the RPI study programs, also it's affected in the plant. You have smart corrosion engineer also helping you in the plant, in the facilities, how to identify the damage mechanisms for any corrosion lobes, and what part of the inspection need more than the others through the RPI study, which is powerful. He's told us that RPI is prioritize our job in the plants. All these programs, if you collect them all together, it will help you to make the facilities safe and reliable for the operation. But corrosion under installation is still under control.
Yes, and I think you mentioned a key word there: control. It's having better control, and even though it's not a fast process, but the ability to be able to be alerted exactly where and when, and to Praful's point, it's a localized issue. That in itself must be of value to you. And talking about value, Aaron Chandran mentioned something about the good old heat exchangers. I'm sure you have to deal with a lot of heat exchangers issues, Ali, in the field. For heat exchanger tube failures, and to predict several scenarios that might lead to it, can AI, artificial intelligence, play a better role in prediction? And yes, how far current technologies can support this? So maybe Praful, is there anything that you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think this goes beyond CUI. I think this is going to the corrosion issue of tube failures. I think heat exchanger, that's a known problem in the world, and there have been tried and tested scientific problems, but solutions, but not many effective. So now people are looking at predictions and AI. And believe it or not, my assessment of AI technologies is, if humans can predict it with their expert knowledge, AI can do probably a better job, because the technology has evolved, and Simon can probably vouch for that. Heat exchanger tube failure, not a CUI, but it is a big issue, and I think data-driven technologies can also help there. That's my quick take.
Okay, excellent. Conscious we're now out of time, but let's maybe just finish off with, we always like someone to come in on the mic, and I know Wilfred has been asking lots of good questions, and I feel guilty that we're not been able to cover off all your questions. Wilfred, are you we able to pass the mic on to Wilfred? Can you talk?
Yes, just
Can you speak a bit louder, Wilfred, please? No? Okay, so I heard Wilfred and now don't. So that's a shame, but there's lots of good questions. I know, Wilfred, you've asked lots of good questions. We are now out of time, conscious that people need to get back to their work, and conscious people need to deal with CUI. So let's end it here. But I've really enjoyed this session. It's been a great session to have people like Ali from the field in operations, to Praful as always, Mike. It's always good to get a perspective from a financier, and also Simone from a technology perspective. But it's great that you have that corrosion management expertise. So I really enjoyed this session and panel. Again, it's a great opportunity to leverage technology as part of combating CUI, but it's not a silver bullet. We all need to collaborate and share data. We all need to think about the right use cases, and of course it comes down to what is the value. And we heard about if we can even make improvements in improving the effectiveness of inspections, so that when we do inspect, we know that there is damage and we can early deal with that damage. That would be a great step change, I think. So let's hopefully we can crack this. It's great to have you all again. At CUI Over Coffee will continue to look out for the next session. But thank you, panel. Have a great day, evening, and I hope you stay safe and well. I hope everyone else stays safe and well. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thanks for inviting me.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care.